should be live. I'm Alex. I'm part of the Lichess team, and the idea for this stream is to start to take a look at the practice feature on Lichess. You can see I have it up on the screen now. We released this practice feature, I think, about a year ago, maybe a little bit more than that, and it hasn't really changed much in that year. So what I wanted to do now is to start looking at the feature again and really see if it accomplishes what we wanted it to do when we made it, to see if we can make any improvements, and basically just evaluate it and test it, and see how it can be better. And hopefully I can get some feedback from the chat as well. Maybe some of you guys have good ideas, so we can improve Lichess together. Before taking kind of a high-level picture, I think it might be useful to look on individual exercises here and see if they actually accomplish what we want to do. So let's just start with the simple piece checkmates. So we have one study here that is about checkmating with pieces. And the general layout or structure of these studies is that in the beginning there should be, maybe it's not valid for this one actually, but generally the first exercises are fairly simple, and then they get more advanced. So in this first exercise, it says at the bottom here, the goal is to checkmate the opponent, and the instructive message here is use your queen and rook to restrict the king and deliver checkmate. Mate in 3 if played perfectly. Alright, so I'm going to play, try to behave like a normal user, and of course if a user does these exercises, they would normally be a beginning chess player. So let's try something like the staircase mate. I noticed that there's an engine evaluation in the top right here. So I can already see that this is mate in 3, but I knew that already, so I guess that's not really a problem. Can do this, and when I'm done, it has I get a green bar down here that lets me know I made it, and I can go to the next exercise. I believe there should be a toggle somewhere that could allow me to auto switch to the next exercise, but I guess that is removed when I get this message. So let me try to reset this and do this exercise again. There is no actual reset button here, but I think I can click this button to go to the first position and do the same thing again. From a usability perspective, maybe this green bar should go away if I click this to reset the exercise. Alternatively, maybe there should be another or a separate reset button where the user can click if they have the intention of resetting the exercise and they want to try it again. So maybe I should take a note of that. Maybe there should be a clear reset button for users, because sometimes you might want to try the exercise multiple times, even if you succeed. Okay, so I reset it. What happens if I checkmate again? Yeah, so the same message is still there. I don't get 2 of them at least. So I can go to the next exercise, and now I also see the toggle in the bottom left. let me try and see how that works. The next exercise here is a 2 rook mate, so that should be very similar and familiar. Okay, success, and now it auto switched. Switched pretty fast, but there's not really a lot of information to consume for the user, so that's probably okay. So now I'm on the queen and bishop mate. Use your queen and bishop to restrict the king and deliver checkmate. Mate in 5 if played perfectly. So one thing I'm wondering is this a good exercise to have? I mean, if you know how to mate with the queen only, which is 2 exercises ahead of where we are right now, then surely you would be able to mate with a queen and bishop. So I wonder if the real value here is maybe being able to checkmate with the queen and the bishop without using the king, because that would obviously be possible. But you will never get into that situation in a real game. So I'm not sure if it makes sense to have these exercises at all, actually. Okay, let's do it. All right, so we got it. And now I'm using the queen and knight mate. All right. Yeah, I don't want to do that. We can do this. Alright, queen mate, of course we know that. Let's see what the text says here. Use your queen to restrict the king, force it to the edge of the board, and deliver checkmate. The queen can't do it alone, so use your king to help. Mate in 6 if played perfectly. Alright, let's actually compare the text here and see whether it's consistent. So use your queen and rook to restrict the king and deliver checkmate. Mate in 3. Use your rooks to restrict the king. Mate in 4. Use your queen and bishop to restrict the king and deliver checkmate. It looks like we have been consistent in using the same type of language, at least. Queen mate. Use your queen to restrict the king, force it to the edge of the board, and deliver checkmate. Use your king to help. Yeah, I guess using the king to help is not strictly necessary in the other ones. So from that perspective it makes sense to mention it here. And the rook mate, or let's actually do this one, I guess, so we get the check mark. Rook mate. Okay, how do we do this fast? I don't know. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And now the message here is different. It says, success, back to practice menu. And for the other ones it said, go to the next one, I believe. Maybe we should check that again. So let's disable the load next exercise immediately option. And mate again. And let's see what happens. Success, go to next exercise. Okay, so in both situations we have an exclamation point, go to next exercise. And here it said back to the practice menu. That sounds a little bit weird. Maybe we should have a better word for that. Back to practice menu should be called, what should it be called? Back to practice lobby. I mean, back to is a term that, or a phrase that is used for tournaments as well, right? Back to tournament is a very common phrase. So starting the phrase with back to makes sense. But I'm not sure if I would call this the practice menu, practice lobby, practice main page, front page. Maybe there is nothing better than the menu. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. All right. So that was piece checkmates 1. So what is this feature trying to accomplish? It's kind of a playground for people to see if they are able to do these checkmates. They're not necessarily that instructive. I guess we could describe mating techniques here, because it's more, as I say, it's more of an opportunity to show that you are able to do it rather than actually learning how to do it. So maybe we could be better at the teaching part. I don't know, maybe that's what lessons are for, which is a different feature. Probably. Okay, so I'll make a note of that as well then, that okay, we could be more educational in practice, but maybe lessons are a better fit for that. And I think I agree with that. And we will see that when we get to lessons in a few streams. All right. Let's see, practice list. Okay, here I'm able to switch between studies, or between different themes I want to practice. Maybe I want it, and I guess this goes back to the front page. All right, let's just test if the changer here works. Selector, so Checkmate Patterns 1. Okay, so this is a little bit different. It's not basic checkmates with 1 or 2 pieces, but this is about recognizing checkmate patterns, which could happen in the middle game as well. And here is where you see the real structure that I talked about earlier, that you can have very simple exercises in the beginning, and they may become then more and more difficult. So here our goal is to checkmate the opponent in 1 move, and it says that a back rank mate is a checkmate delivered by a rook or queen along the back rank in which the mated king is unable to move up the board because the king is blocked by friendly pieces, usually pawns, on the 2nd rank. I guess that's true. I mean, you sometimes see a corridor mate, maybe would be the better word then, on a file. Maybe there are some double pawns on a piece or something, and then king gets trapped on a file. But then maybe you would call it a corridor mate and not a back rank mate. But that could be one of the examples here, because as far as I remember, these 3 examples are only about the traditional back rank mate. But let's do these and see. Okay, so this should be an obvious move, and we go to the next exercise, and now we can see that the position is very similar, and of course the idea is to build upon the thing that you just learned if you're starting from scratch. So I guess 2 different moves here work, but let's do this one. That was a success. Okay, and the final one. And this is the first example we have seen today where we actually have a position from a real game, and the game is also quoted here. So if I search for this game, I will find that on chess games. And maybe here is a room for improvement, that instead of just citing the game like this, ideally there would be a link here, maybe preferably to an imported game on Lichess. So let's see, if I look at the PGN here, I could import that into Lichess, right? Paste it here. I could request a computer analysis, because why not? And now we have the game in the Lichess database, if it was not already there. And I could link to, yeah, this position, because this is the same position that I use in the exercise. So this could be a link, here to that game. So maybe you were curious about how the players got to this position, or the result maybe. I mean, in this case the result is obvious, but there are other examples where you know, the game continues. Yeah, so that's a good improvement. Let's take note of that. So we could link from, or instead of text only game citations, we could link to an import. We could link to the appropriate position in a game imported to Lichess. That seems like a good improvement, and I don't think it would be too much work. All right, so here, if you're a beginner, if you're too quick, if you don't think about it, maybe you will play this move, but you know, slightly, kind of the extra step you have to think about here is you need to check here first, so that you will actually get the back rank mate, so that they can take back with the king on the final move. All right. In some other chapters, I think, you know, the difficulty will be higher than this, because this is, you know, the most difficult exercise we have for back rank mate, and it's still fairly simple. But when we get into the a little bit more advanced themes, then the difficulty will be increased, and hopefully there will be then some challenges for stronger players as well. All right, let's take a look at the hook mate. I like this one. So in the instructional text here, it says the hook mate involves the use of a white rook, knight and pawn, along with one black pawn to limit the black king's escape. All right, so we have the white rook, knight and pawn, along with one black pawn to limit the black king's escape. The rook is protected by the knight, and the knight is protected by the pawn. So we see that the pawn is already protecting the knight, and the idea is that the knight will protect the rook when it lands on e8. I'm not sure I'm so happy with the instructional text here, because it says here that the hook mate involves the use of a white rook, knight and pawn. And of course that is only true in this specific exercise. Of course black can also deliver hook mates. And it says that along with one black pawn to limit the black king's escape. But obviously it doesn't have to be a pawn, and it doesn't have to be a black pawn either. It could be any piece as long as black cannot capture it. So this description is very specific to this specific exercise and not the general hook mate. So probably I want to update this text as well and make it better. So I will write a note here that I should generalize the instructional text on this exercise. All right, but still we pass the exercise here. Okay. Then we have the second example, and this is a little bit more difficult. This is from a real game, Ivanchuk versus Aronian, 2013. And we're supposed to deliver the checkmate on the third move. So we see a configuration here. The pawn supports a knight, and if we just compare this to the previous example, we want a rook on g6. I think a rook, we can notice that maybe a rook on g7 will also work, because this knight controls this square, and yeah, king can go here. So we can play rook g7 check, rook g7 check, and then okay, he blocks here, and then we can take it. So that was also a hookmate. Let's go to the next exercise. And the final one here, Nepomniachtchi versus Lopez, 2008. Checkmate the opponent in 3 moves. So we can notice the pattern here. If we get, I guess here, if we get a rook on, or queen on b8, that is a hookmate. So we should be able to do this and deliver the hookmate. So those 2 examples from real games were definitely more difficult than the third example of the back rank mate. Let's go to the next exercise and take a look at the instructional text. So here it says that in Anastasia's mate, a knight and rook team up to trap the opposing king between the side of the board on one side and a friendly piece on the other. This checkmate got its name from the novel Anastasia und das Schachspiel by Johann Heinze. Okay. So, okay, the knight controls these 2 squares, and basically we want to take away these, and we can do that by playing rook h5. So you notice here the structure again, that in the first example is primarily like instructional, almost giving you the answer flat out. It should be very simple. And this is to kind of very new players should be able to use this feature and learn these things. So we want to start very basic, but then ideally we want to have, you know, we want to provide a challenge to intermediate and maybe in some cases more advanced players as well. But it will be difficult to please everyone, of course. So if we go to the next exercise, we should see the difficulty ramp up a little bit. And this is another example where we reuse the position but just make it a tiny bit more complicated. So if we go back to the previous exercise here and we compare these 2, the king moved here, we put a pawn here, and we put a queen here. And now we want to checkmate the opponent in 2 moves. So the final move will be the same, right? We will play rook h5 in this exercise as well, but we should then understand we need to play queen takes h7 check first, and then we can deliver the same mate as we did in the first exercise. And I think the next chapter is similar as well. We make it, you know, 1 step more complicated. So again, we can play queen takes here. We will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And then we can play queen takes here. And we will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And then we can play queen takes here. We will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And we will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And then we can play queen takes here. And we will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And then we can play queen takes here. And we will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And then we can play queen takes here. And we will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And then we can play queen takes here. And we will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And then we can play queen takes here. And we will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And then we can play queen takes here. And we will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And then we can play queen takes here. And we will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And then we can play queen takes here. And we will deliver the checkmate by playing rook h5. And then we can play queen takes here. And we will deliver the checkmate by play But let's get the knight in position first with a check. So now we can sacrifice and can deliver Anastasia's mate. So when we have done this kind of step by step, then hopefully it will be easier for players to, you know, discover and think about this tactic if they ever see it in a puzzle or a real game. If we go to the next exercise, that's the final one for Anastasia's mate. This is actually from a real game. And now we're kind of moving away from the default standard position that we used in the 3 previous exercises. So this is Adrenko versus Kalinia, 2007. And again, I think it would be a cool thing if we could click this text and go to the actual game imported to Lichess, and we could see, you know, how they got to this position, etc. So I think we should definitely do that. And maybe I'll do that this weekend actually. Shouldn't take long. Importing, I don't know, maybe 50 games or so, probably not more. Okay, so the final one here, we are now black, and yeah, we're not doing it on this side of the board. Right, so it's fairly similar. I think we get the knight in position, we sacrifice our queen, and then we deliver the mate with a rook move. And hopefully even fairly new players will see this pattern when they have played through the 3 previous exercises. All right. The next one is the blind swine mate. Blind swine mate. Let's take a look at the instructional text here and if it is useful or not. Maybe there's something we can improve here. We want to checkmate the opponent in 3 moves. The name of the pattern is attributed to Polish master David Janowski, referring to coupled rooks on a player's 7th rank as swine. For this type of mate, the rooks on white's 7th rank can start out on any of the 2 of the files from A to E, and although black pawns are commonly present, they are not necessary to affect the mate. So I think this is probably a spelling error, right? There should be affect with an A and not with an E. And also, again, we saw this problem earlier that for one exercise, the instructional text was, it didn't really describe the mate pattern in a general sense. It talked just about this specific position. I think we should avoid using language like, you know, rooks on white's 7th rank, because obviously the same thing works if we flip the board, flip colors. So I'll make a note here that I should both fix the spelling error if I, of course, want to keep the text. I should probably mute that Slack. All right, done so. And I will make a note here that improve instructional text, definitely fix spelling error. Okay, so let's look at the actual puzzle here. It's the first exercise, so it should be a simple thing. We want the first exercise to be simple. And the first move is a check. Second move is a check. And the final move is also a check. So with the instructional text, that should be a very simple one, even for beginners. We can go to the next exercise. And let's see, we have the same thing, right? Yeah. And now we go here. Or what? Yeah, because we control the square with the knight, right? Right. Yeah, so we can do this. That's quite a lot of moves. Still fairly simple, maybe. Well, let's reset this and see. Now, my problem, this is a user interface or user experience thing. Because if this was a real reset button, I would expect us to get back to the original state. I don't want to see this green success box, but I do want to see the original instructional text. And also, it's not necessarily that obvious that this is how you should reset the puzzle if you want to do it again. Maybe a lot of users, if they want to, will switch to one puzzle and then go back, because that will actually reset it. So I think I'll make a note of that as well, that we should add, you know, a real reset button. This is from a real game, 1906, but we already know that, so that's not a problem to know. So maybe you could argue that, you know, is this should there be an exercise in between here, kind of ramping up the difficulty more gradually, or is this simple enough? I'm not really sure. Let's look at the third one and see maybe if that is actually more difficult, or if it's easier, maybe we can switch them around. Okay, so we're on the third exercise. Checkmate the opponent in 5 moves. This is from an Ivanchuk Aronian game, 2006. And yeah, because if they take here, then it's mate there, so similar concept. Okay, so here's Zwischenzug or something, or I don't know, that's maybe not the right term. Okay, so if I go here, what happens if I go there? I think I want to go here. Yeah, and then it's just here and here and here, right? Yeah. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe these two should be switched. I'm not sure. What is the better option? All right. Finally, let's take a look at the Smothered mate. Hopefully we have a nice simple exercise in the beginning. And yes, we do. Okay, let's take a look at the instructional text. Smothered mate occurs when a knight checkmates a king that is smothered, surrounded by his friendly pieces. And he has nowhere to move, nor is there any way to capture the knight. That sentence could be simpler, I think. It is also known as Philidor's legacy. After Philidor, though its documentation predates Philidor by several hundred years. That sounds like something copied from Wikipedia, so maybe that should be a more, I don't know, friendly, interesting. I think there is some text improvement to be done there. So I will add that to my list. But other than that, I guess this is very straightforward. Go to the next one, which should be a tiny bit more complicated. And here again we see the same principle that we used earlier, that the positions are very similar, just one more step of complexity. So of course I cannot play here first because the queen can take. So I sacrifice my queen, and then we get the Smothered mate. I think that is a fine step up in difficulty. Let's go to the third one. Checkmate the opponent in 2 moves from a game with Grishuk versus Ponomario from 2000. Yeah, okay, so we go here, he takes, and we have the smothered mate. But from a real game, not the same position, so, but still fairly simple, I think. So this is also a good step up in difficulty. Smothered mate 4. This is the final one. Checkmate the opponent in 6 moves. Paul Morphy, 1859. Wow. Okay. So we have a discovered check here. Checks, and then here, and then here. Now we can do the same as we did in the previous exercise. All right, and yeah, that I think that definitely belongs as the last exercise here. Pretty nice. And this was, yeah, that was from a real game, but a very long time ago. Okay, so if we take, you know, one step back, what do we think about these exercises? The idea here is basically to teach these, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different checkmate patterns. And I think they are all taught fairly well. At least they all start fairly simple and they get gradually more difficult. There's not that much instructional text, but I'm not sure that is necessary. I've made a note of a couple of improvements. Maybe for the back rank mate we could add another exercise to show that it's possible to do a corridor mate on a file, because that actually happens from time to time. Did I note that? Maybe I just said it. Alright, so I'll make a note of that as well. That should add a corridor mate example on a file. And let's see where these were. Where, okay, we have one example of these 3 are from a real game. So if I'm really lucky, I will find a master game that has a corridor mate on a file. Whether it was played or not, maybe not that important. I mean, played on the board. But that would be useful, I think. The hook mate, I think, was fine. And as that does mate. I like these synthetic examples here where you have exactly the same position but just with a few adjustments, because that feels, at least to me, like a very good way of teaching, and teaching by example and kind of, you know, in a logical way. Blind swine mate. I'm not sure which one of these were more difficult. Maybe I should try the analysis mode just to see how what the user experience is like for that. Because here was a bit uncertain what was the best move. Analysis board. Aha, I get the new, it uses the current fence, so I don't get the, you know, the previous moves with me over, which I guess is fine. Then the engine is on and I can see what should be played. The engine plays this. And what if I go here? Aha, then I get checked here. I go here. And this is that's actually almost a hook mate. Alright, and then there is still a game to be played here, apparently. Unchecked again. Wow. Alright, so you're supposed to spot here then that this is dangerous. I'm not sure how obvious that is. Maybe I'm just bad, but So I would maybe say that this is more difficult then, because you actually have to see here that you're not supposed to go here. And of course, if you just see that you're checked and that you are safe when you go here, then that's not so difficult. But still, it's slightly more tricky maybe than the previous position. So I think my conclusion is that I'm happy with the current order of these two exercises. All right, that was useful, at least for me. I have probably 8, 9, 10 improvement suggestions made after this fairly short, evaluation retrospective session. So I think I'll end it here for now, but I'll probably do this again in the future. So I'll see you then.